This is the Oakwyn Podcast, featuring Morgan Brown and Michael Yu.
Welcome to the Oakwyn Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Yu.
And I'm Morgan Brown.
And we have an amazing special guest
Remarkable.
with us. Remarkable special guest today with us, Gary Serra.
Woo!
And for Gary. How you doing, Gary?
I'm great. How are you?
We are pumped.
Amazing.
I am pumped right now.
Yeah, exactly. Feeling the
excited.
energy.
So excited to be here.
Something that I have to say about you, Gary, you have an amazing kind of energy to you.
Aura.
Yeah, an aura.
That's
An aura.
sweet.
Yeah.
First of all, let's do a little background story, okay?
Sure, yeah, please.
How long have you been an Oakwynite for, Gary? This is the question.
I've been an Oakwynite for about 2 years, I think.
Ooh,
2
okay.
years, guys.
About that.
Yeah.
So
COVID pandemic.
we're very excited to have Gary. How long have you been licensed for now?
21 years.
Oh.
20, yeah, almost 22. Yeah.
So wealth of
I
knowledge,
feel like
a
just
veteran.
so much. When you get to
I
past
was
the
12.
20, yeah, you're 12 years old.
Yeah, of course.
When you get to like 20 years, I feel like it's like a really good, I don't know. There's like this really good energy of like being a new, and it's not like you're a new agent. It's not like you're like a 10 to 20 year agent in the sense that you're just like, okay, this is just work. You start to realize, okay, it's time for us to give back. It's time for me to, tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. I think you have, by that point, I mean, if you've played your card rights like you guys have, like you have a really solid foundation and also kind of like a really good mechanism in play where, you know, as long as you keep doing things, like it just happens.
Happens.
You don't, it's not like, I don't feel like I have that like desperation, like, oh my
Right.
God, I have to
Yeah,
do
that
Yes.
anxiety.
Yes.
I mean, I have anxiety for other things.
I still do, yeah.
But
Don't
not
we
that
all?
same, like the things just flow, you know, it's
Right.
not that like you don't have like commission breath or
Yes.
typically or that. I mean,
Yeah.
I like the commission breath.
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
You haven't?
You haven't heard
No.
commission
Oh.
breath?
What? Am I like under a rock or something?
Yeah, like I had to brush my teeth every morning. like I had major commission breath when I first started. But Gary, I think what's something that's really interesting is I love to hear people's journey and their kind of their career path and kind of how. So how did you stumble upon real estate and getting
Yes.
into it, Gary?
So I mean, it sounds really nerdy and cliche, but I actually wanted to be a realtor when I was a little boy. Like when I grew up on the East Side and my parents were immigrants and I'm first generation. And I remember
You're
having
first generation.
First generation.
Portuguese, yeah. And then we had like I would do these pretend open houses. Like my parents had their house listed. It was 1980, I think they had it, and they didn't sell. But I remember they had this lady, like I don't know how old she was, but she was like middle aged, and she drove up in like a Cadillac Eldorado, two-tone,
fancy.
like I think it was gray and burgundy.
Wow.
But I just thought she was so classy and glamorous, and
Right.
anyway, I just thought, you know, I want to do that. And then I remember having pretend open houses, and I would sit in front of our house on the grass, and I would draw our house. Like it was just really weird.
Wow.
So that was that. But then I got in the business. I wanted to get in when I was around like 19, 20, and then I actually signed up for the course, paid for it, and then I chickened out. I thought nobody's gonna take me seriously.
Wow,
I'm
okay.
too young, and I also looked like
Really young.
so I didn't. I mean, hindsight, maybe I should have, but. Then when I was 25, I decided to pursue it, and I took the course. I passed, and I joined Remax Crest, which was on Alberni and Bidwell.
Right.
And the old managing broker, Deborah Upton, she hired me.
Right.
And she was like really like kind of like you guys, like she was like really at that time in it. Yeah.
Yes,
and
I
really
remember,
moving
yeah.
forward. And she hired me as the first new agent in their company. They didn't hire newbies back then.
Oh, okay.
So I was super honored, but my life was kind of I was kind of getting my life back on track. I'd had struggles in the past with just personally like alcohol and drugs and things like that. And I was sober for a while. Anyways, long story short, I was licensed for about a year and a half there. And then things really kind of went sideways again for me. And then I was like just really struggling personally. And then in 99, 2000, I got out of the business.
Oh,
I had
okay.
to
Yes,
because
yes,
I
you
was,
had to. You were
my
out
life
of
was
it.
just so
Not
bad.
there.
What was going on?
I mean, at that point, my life was just kind of circling down, like, you know, the toilet kind of.
Toilet.
Like, I was
Yeah.
like, you know, almost dying physically. I was really in bad shape.
Gee, and this
I was
is
becoming unemployable, basically, and I went
Yeah.
bankrupt. I lost everything. I didn't have to give up my license from an ethics point of view. I just was like, I couldn't be in it anymore. And then so I was living in my parents' basement, and then I went back into, because before that I'd done retail for like 15 years. I worked at Holt Renfrew,
In
Louis
between,
Vuitton.
before that, yes.
Before that, Louis Vuitton and like Holtz and
Okay.
Escada and all these
Yes,
places.
oh my
So you
God,
did
the gay
retail
retail
I love
thing.
the, I love the
Okay,
Escada.
okay.
I love it.
Yeah. So I had to go back to that just to have a job, and then eventually, like, I got my life back on track. So after Remax, I went to Sutton for a little period
Yes.
of time, and then that's when I got out after. And then I came back. Eventually, got my life, sort of more back on track, and was trying to build that foundation again. And then in January 2002, I got clean and sober again, and then people close to me, like my mentors, like Ian Holt and so on, they said, get your license back, get your
Yeah,
license
come
back.
back to us.
So I
Yes.
did, and then in 2004 I'd start all over. I did the course all from scratch again.
Oh, okay.
Great.
It passed.
Fresh start.
Fresh, and at that time I was working for DKNY, and then I remember it was like I was flat. I was 34 and I was broke, living in my parents' basement. And then I said, okay, if I can do 2 deals, enough that I have some money in the bank, then I'll quit my job. And so
gosh.
as soon as I and
Fire
back,
was on.
and
You're
back
like,
then,
okay.
like a place was like 200,000.
Oh my gosh.
So anyways, as soon as I had a couple of deals, I made a commitment. I quit the store.
DKNY.
Yeah, and then I just went full on back into the business, and then that's
That's
around
when I
the
met
time
you.
and that's when I
Yeah.
met you. Yeah.
Wow. So
What a
Gary,
moment.
so thank you for being so like open and vulnerable about it. You know, so has this been a lifelong struggle with kind of the substances?
No, to be honest, it wasn't. I think for me, like, I mean, I don't know. I think it's one of those things you either have or you don't. Sometimes it's hereditary, sometimes it's not. My family, it's not. It's not in our family.
Okay.
But I think for me, it was more situational in the sense where, in elementary school, I was severely bullied. Like, I used to get chased daily by boys with sticks, like, threatened my life. I remember in kindergarten, I used to go to Charles Dickens Annex right by your old houses.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
And I was these boys cornered me in the boys' bathroom and said, if you come out, we're going to kill you. And I sat there for 45 minutes when classes were already on, and I couldn't leave, and I was so scared. Finally, I thought, okay, they're gone. I kept listening, and then I came out, went to my teacher.
Kindergarten. I just want to say this
I
to
was
people.
kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
Came out of the bathroom, went to the class, and I told a teacher, said, where were you? I said, I was in the bathroom. These boys, threatened me, and she didn't believe me, and I got in trouble. So things like, and that happened like
It was
all
like scarring
the time.
things that happened that just like created
And
this
when those things happen, like if I got chased home and I thought my life was like
in danger.
I wouldn't say anything when I got home.
That's not how it was back then.
So a little
Yeah.
boy internalizing all those things, I kind of like use the like analogy of like I was like Humpty Dumpty, like broken, and so I think that played a factor. And then coming out and just feeling so insecure, and like as a a young gay guy.
When did you come out actually?
I came out around 18.
Okay,
I was after
so
high
after high school.
yeah, so in high school I was I didn't drink, I didn't smoke.
You just like stayed steady.
My parents were
Yes.
pretty protective, so I didn't drink. I was a really good boy, like good kid, like goody two shoes. Went to church every Sunday with them. Blah blah blah.
Just saying,
I started
Portugal
working.
is the
yeah,
best.
yeah,
Portuguese.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm just gonna say.
I started working when I was 14. I was that kind of person. I just wanted to work.
Okay.
I didn't really know like what I wanted to do, and I thought if I don't know what I'm going to do, why am I going to go to school? Like it doesn't like
Yeah.
if I don't have a career path.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just want to make money. So I did, and then so I was working in a garage. My dad was a heavy duty mechanic, so I was like my job would be like go to power wash the garage. It was like
Yeah, power wash
and
everything.
all that. And then
everywhere.
I started working at Shoppers Drug Mart at Kingsgate Mall in high school. After
Kingsgate
that, I know,
Right,
where
I
you
remember
couldn't
that.
sell Lysol or mouthwash to certain people. We were
Right.
told.
Yeah.
Hey guys, still I think
Still
it goes
like
that way. Yeah.
Now it's probably more things, but anyway. So that was like, and then and then after, as soon as I like around grade 12, I did like career development, and then I started working at RBC as my like career development project, and then they hired me right out of high school, and I got a full-time job at the Main and Hastings branch in commercial accounts upstairs. So
Oh my
I was
God.
literally filing checks.
Isn't
And
that
that's when I started.
crazy?
That's when things changed because I was making good money,
Yes.
especially for a 17-year-old.
Right.
And I had a full-time job at a good at a bank.
17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I bought my first like nice car. I bought like a Volkswagen Scirocco
Oh my God.
right off the dealership on Kingsway.
Wow.
And I paid cash for it.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
Always a businessman at heart. There you go.
And then and then I basically like that's where, because then like bankers drink and smoke a lot, by the way. At least back then,
Yes.
there used to have crazy parties like in like staff room, like
Okay.
where people would be like in their underwear dancing on tables, no joke.
Really?
Drunk, like, and then that's where I started to smoke, and that's kind of at the age where I was like, okay,
So
I
you were
think
very impressionable. At
I
that
was,
point, yeah.
and I knew that I wanted to like, I knew what I was kind of, but even though I
Yes.
didn't want to be it, but then that's when I started dabbling into going to the nightclub scene,
Nightclubs.
Yeah.
and then I fell into that scene. Like that became
Part of you.
Part of me. It was like my chosen
course.
family. I was like, this is where I belong. But then, of course, because I was so insecure and like, I was impressionable and I just wanted to fit in and I wanted to be the cool kid. And so the
That
badder you
trauma
were,
when you were back
yeah,
came in.
totally. The badder you were, the more I wanted to hang out with you. So that's
Yes.
kind of where my life kind of took a different trajectory. And because like cocaine was my drug of choice. And so as soon as that introduced, within two years, my life was already, I always say it was like fun and then fun with problems and then like problems.
Yes.
And then that's when like it kind of went down fast.
What was the strength to get you out of that? I think a habit, but also addiction,
It's
obviously.
addiction. Yeah, full addiction.
You know, like what was the things, I know you, but what can you tell people? What really changed that for you?
I mean, first and foremost, I had to really admit that I had a problem, and that took almost a decade, 9 years of struggling
Wow.
in recovery, of like just not really accepting of who I was. And so I think that's the key, is just that's the first part, is just accepting this is who I, like, this is what's happening.
Yes.
And so once I thoroughly did that, then my life kind of started, and then I needed to ask for help. That's one thing I knew is like, or that I found out, it's not something I could do alone. I needed help from other people, and so that's kind of how my life.
And the tribe, the people that you built around you.
Totally, yeah.
Right? Because like that, and were your parents still involved? Like, were you, because I think
100%. I lived with my parents up until all those years of struggle. Plus, then like I
Wow.
only lived on my own, like very briefly, a couple of times. So in some ways, I was protected and enabled by them. I don't blame them. It's what they best that they knew. And in some ways,
Did they know what was going on?
Oh, 100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
it's like, you're like,
They would see it. I mean, I'll never forget. Like one day, my mom was on the kitchen floor, like in fetal position, sobbing.
oh,
And I just like, I never forgot that, because that was so, like, at the time, I just kind of not brushed it off, but like
it's where you were.
but I never forgot that. That was really hard. Painful, yeah. And
Painful.
going forward, eventually, for me, like the thing has always been, now it's like a living amends for them, like for me to them, like to just be a good son, that kind of thing.
I mean, I had the privilege to be at your wedding, and I just saw the way the whole family just like, it was like a big hug in that room.
Yeah.
And it was a very powerful moment, like seeing your family and just you just being up there with your husband. It's like, it's just such a beautiful thing, right? Like just from where you were and how
Yeah.
far you've gone. And the family was just like, the best thing about Gary, it's like this is why you're so brilliant and you're remarkable, is that you're like just an open book. And you say like, this is who I am, and take it or leave it. But this is who I'm so comfortable where I am now. And that's such like to move past it and to talk about it.
Yeah.
You're right. It's about first admitting it.
I mean, to me, I don't have shame around it. I mean, obviously, I don't wish some of those things on anybody, because I did and saw things, and my parents saw things that they never should have see or experienced. And but at the same time, like, it's part of who I am. It's made me who I am. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for that struggle, and then also then moving forward from it. And sometimes I also, am very mindful of the fact that you never know who you're talking to, or and that your words could be impactful for change for someone else.
Oh, that's such a
So-
aha moment there.
Is there like, was there a turning point for you, Gary? Like, what was that kind of moment?
I think there were many of those. I think it's almost like if you think of like an elevator where you can get off in different floors, And there were different situations that were kind of like, oh, now I'm on lobby, now I'm on P2, now I'm on P3. Like, and it's like, like where like you almost hit different bottoms. And I think to be honest, like to answer your question, Michael, I think for me, like what I remember in my mind most clearly is that one time where I'd done it again and it was like a shit show. And my parents were just beside themselves. They were threatening to sell the house and move and not tell me where they were going, that kind of. And for some reason, something in a voice in my head said, "You can't get away with this anymore."
Interesting.
I feel like that was audible.
Yeah, it was it was like a voice that said, "Like you're done. You're done.
Yeah,
you can't
done.
you can't get away with this anymore."
Yeah.
So, anyway. Yeah.
But the addiction part is, and everyone knows this, we talk a lot about this on our podcast, just about addiction, about mental illness, about our kindness to others. And it's so important to have these stories.
Totally.
And to talk about them.
When you guys did the 2-part podcast on mental health, sometime maybe a year or more ago, like that was very impactful for me. I was so happy that I was in a brokerage that even addressed it and was open and talked about it and it's also, it was timely with COVID and all that. But I mean, it's a huge thing. Like
It's a huge
for me
thing.
to this day, mental health is key. I mean, I have things that I didn't even realize. Like I have anxiety. That was from my mom, like for
Yes.
sure.
Was she anxious?
Yeah,
Or
and I
is she
think
anxious?
she has dementia now and she's in long-term care. So that happened in the last year. So it's been really tough for us.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I remember my first memories of my mom. She was always like so worried and anxious and tense and reactive and like, I don't know what to do. Like it was always like that. And it was like the way she spoke. And it was the 70s into early 80s. I mean, there was no it wasn't the
Didn't
same.
talk about it.
No. So
There's not enough exposure.
Why do you think she was like that?
I don't know. I don't know if it was maybe just like her, sort of a mental illness for her, or just maybe it just situational. I'm not really sure. I mean, it was tough. They were immigrants that had very little money. Like my mom was working days and my dad was working graveyard so that they could look after me because they couldn't afford babysitter.
Right.
And
of
they had
course.
bought their first house with borrowed money from my uncle and aunt. Like they borrowed every cent. So like they were working so hard. Like they paid the house off in like 10 years. Like, I mean, they bought it for like $17,000, but still like,
Had to get there.
Well, no, that's
had to
a
get there.
mountain.
yeah.
Mountain to climb.
So like, I think there was just a lot of pressure, and then just, who knows?
I think immigrant. I mean, I have an immigrant father. You have immigrant parents.
Yeah.
It's like they have a really big thing to prove to themselves.
Yeah.
Not just their family, but to themselves. Like they're
themselves,
here and and they want the best for their children and they want the best for everyone. And so maybe there's like this anxiety.
Yeah. I'm so proud that I come from immigrant parents.
Me
I
too.
really-
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah,
too.
because I feel like they made me who I am, and they really showed me the value of being hardworking
Right.
and responsible and being like a person of your word, like all of that. It's never mind about like having like accolades or like they just
No.
were like really like
Simple things.
simple, honest people, and I think I'm really proud of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
do
amazing.
you feel like coming from immigrant parents, all of us, like there's this element of like feeling lesser than then they have to kind of like work
Yes.
extra hard or extra
Yes.
do the
Yes.
extra
Yes.
to like be as equal to
Totally.
to people that are from this community. So I feel like we're
Yeah.
really standing on their shoulders.
For sure. I mean, I remember when I was little, and maybe that was part of the not feeling comfortable in my own skin, but I used to wish and fantasize and pretend that I was from a West Side family and that we played tennis and like all these things. And, that wasn't me. And then, I mean, Michael and I have had this conversation. Like even like early on in my career in business, in real estate, like I always felt like I needed to work twice as hard to be equal to other people.
We all have that in common.
Yeah, totally. Right. Yeah, for different reasons. Yeah.
For
Yeah.
different reasons, but you're
Yeah.
right. It's the immigrant kind of mentality. I think they have a lot of pressure on us as children too. I think we were really we held a lot to be to just be the new kids on the block, right?
sure.
But there was also, I mean, there's lots of things. There's a lot of racism
Yeah.
that I endured, like
course.
being in that, and but I think when you come from a family of love, and during that time, they only express it in different ways, right? So
Yeah.
you take it along with you.
Totally. I
We
mean,
just had this conversation over lunch. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
I mean, that for me, they are an example, like a living, actionable example of unconditional love. And I know parents
Yes.
usually are, but I mean, I think
I
different
don't
parents.
think that's necessarily
That's-
true.
Yeah, maybe not.
yeah.
I mean, my parents, I think the fact that they saw so much shit happen and things that, like, are incomprehensible, like demoralization
Yes.
things, like
Yeah, of your children.
of your
too.
children, and they
Yes.
still like love me and whatever. And then also the fact that I was gay, and they were very
Did they accept you right away about that, or was there
so
conflict?
they didn't not accept me, like they didn't reject me and kick me out, which happens a lot even to this day.
Yeah.
But they didn't understand it, and they certainly weren't happy about it, and there was a lot of shame around it. So like when I came out by in an argument, like I said
18.
I was like, I'm leaving the house. And they're like, no, you're not, no, you're staying here. But at the same time, it was like, you can't talk about it with anybody. And like they to their credit, like they had to go through the process of
To like
figuring it out
on their own head.
Yeah,
Because they're probably not in that
of course.
headspace.
Yeah,
back
I mean
then.
they weren't raised that way. Like that wasn't in their wheelhouse at all.
Church going and
Yeah,
all that
and
stuff.
all-
There's
yeah.
a lot of elements there.
Totally. So, I mean, they've also become who they are because of going through that the experiences of with me. So, I feel like maybe that was just supposed to happen.
So I'm interested about this 9 years of kind of living in denial. So like, what stories were you telling yourself? And that was the start of your first iteration of your real estate career as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like
Yes.
venturing into entrepreneurship from working steady retail and banking jobs, and then kind of going into your own business, but then living in a state of kind of like dualistic life.
Yes.
Like tell us a little bit about that. Like what was the what was the feeling? What was going on in your mind?
Chaos.
Chaos.
No, I mean, there was chaos, but I think it was just, so that was 4 years, like the first 4 years of my real estate career were in that period. And, I'd say the first year and a half was okay because I was still okay. And then I kind of went off the rails. And then it was just, I think just not, again, kind of like the effort,
Yes.
mode, like, and not really internalizing what I was doing and the consequences of that, like, and not really caring. And again, like, not to blame, because I don't mean it that way, but I think I also I was enabled a lot. No matter what, I had a roof over my head and food on the table.
There's not
and,
much consequences.
and I didn't have to pay for any of it.
Yeah.
Like, it was free, obviously. Like, my immigrant European parents, like other parents, like you live with your parents until you get married.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, if I wasn't getting married, then
You're staying.
you're staying. And I
Yes.
even remember when I moved out after I finally, like, when I got sober this last time and I was back in real estate after a year, I moved into Yaletown
Okay.
to the Crandall building, and I was renting there for a year. And then I bought my first place right by HQ.
Yes.
Oakwyn 16th at 980 West 16th.
Oh wow. Okay.
West Haven.
The West Haven.
I owned a little 1-bedroom there.
I love it.
And anyways.
How did that feel?
It was, when I bought that?
when you
Amazing.
bought it.
Yeah. It was a huge accomplishment. And I was 36 by then.
Yes.
Because I had a late start. But then I felt like I was in catch-up mode.
You're like, I gotta go.
I gotta
turn it on.
Yeah,
Turbo
I gotta
style.
make up for lost time.
Yeah.
So the 9 years was like a lot of struggle, like, and
Yeah,
I think
kind
the headspace was just more like, I don't want to be this, but I feel like I can keep getting away with it.
Yeah. Is there any feeling of like being like kind of like fake, because like at during the day you have to appear professional, but during, these other off times you're doing
Totally. It was
unsavory
a
things, right?
it was a very dualistic life, and I was very ill. Let's just put it that
That's
way. Like,
right.
I was just
That's very right.
I
yeah.
was very ill because
mentally.
mentally, like, because I mean, I was the kind of person where when I was out, I would be binging. I would go for 3 or 4 days straight. I wouldn't eat, sleep, shower, nothing.
You just go.
Go.
Yeah.
And like 24/7.
Yes.
So, so I wasn't I couldn't balance work with that.
Right.
Like if I was gone,
No.
like I was
Couldn't be
MIA.
100%.
I was MIA for days. Like
Wow.
I was,
Yes.
So, so you can't really maintain a real estate career that way.
I'm in subject removal.
Yeah. Where are you?
Where are you?
I had clients once fire me. That I remember that because I was gone and they couldn't. They had reached out to me, not in like during a deal, it was just,
Yeah.
but they like I never.
Where are you?
And so then they fired me, and I was super devastated. And I was just like, well, what do you expect?
Yeah, you like
So-
are like
yeah,
I put myself here kind
Yeah.
of thing.
So how long have you been sober now?
I'll be 21 years this January coming
Oh
up.
my gosh!
Yeah.
Congratulations!
It's like
You're here to
21 years in
that.
real estate, 21
I
years
know.
in. That's crazy.
I
We should
know.
have a 21 party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. And
Thank you.
So like, I
Yes,
think
it's
that's
a
like
accomplishment big time.
that's a lot of willpower. So do you ever feel like, urges or anything? right now?
You know,
Anymore,
thankfully
Gary?
no, because like that obsession that I had is lifted. It's past. It's not about like trying to not like I don't equate it to like white knuckling because I don't do it alone, and I don't feel like it's willpower in the sense where
Okay,
I
yeah.
actually ask for help every day. I say, help me to stay clean and sober
Yes.
today. Like that's part of my morning ritual. Like so.
Oh, I see.
That's right.
Okay. Can you go over your morning ritual with us, please?
Yeah, sure. So
I've
I
always
mean,
wanted to know
so
this.
I
Gonna
will
get
tell you
my
what
notepad
I will
out.
tell you what it isn't. It's not Michael Hughes at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, let me tell you what it's not.
I know it's not
4:30
that.
Let's not
actually.
compare here.
Yeah, 4:30.
I got a 4:30 text and I'm like, what the
Oh,
heck?
I tried that once for a little while. I was in Tom Ferry coaching for about 4
Yes.
years.
Okay.
And then they had like, well, it was all like whatever you wanted, but there was a 5 a.m. club, and I thought, I want to do that.
Right.
Well, I mean, up until more recently, I was always a night owl. Like 2 in the morning, I'd be up or whatever, like watching TV or doing work or whatever. And then, so I just couldn't sustain getting up at 4:30 or 4:45. But anyway, I did try it. But no, so for me today, my daily ritual, I get up around 7:30, and then I pray every morning, and then I let the dog out to do its thing, make coffee, I feed the dog, and then I sit down in my kitchen at my island, and I drink my coffee, and I have either banana or something like that, and then I have a group of people that I do a gratitude list with. We just text each
Amazing.
other. There's about 10 of us. I've been doing it for a couple of years now.
Wow.
And I did it with someone else before that. So just like a few things that you're grateful for, nothing long, and
Short, sweet, done.
literally bullet points. I do it every day. Like, and it has to be. You can't like just do copy and paste. Like you have to pick different things.
I love
Typically,
Be
that.
thoughtful about it.
yeah. So I do that, and then
It's nice to see it on the other side too, like
Yeah.
what other people are
yeah.
saying.
And what we do is we just like each other's like like you like the other person's like
Yeah.
list. That's
Yeah.
it. You don't have to comment.
Don't comment.
Yeah, and then I also have as part of my my 12-step program that there's a daily reflections reading that I get
Yes.
through email, so I read that every day.
If you don't follow Gary, that's what he posts, and I get so excited when I see it. That's
off-
a calm one.
Yeah. So then and then not all the time, but I'd say more than 95% of the days I do the Calm app, which is a 10-minute app, and then I just usually share it on Instagram. And to be honest, that's more recent. That was probably within the last 4 years, and more around mental health. I was feeling like I was kind of like in a depressive, like almost like I was drowning, and I talked about it with friends, and it was during the time of like house reno, and like the
So much
market
going
was
on.
busy, and there was just a lot going on, and I felt like I was like emotionally drowning, and so I started to and my doctor said, you have situational depression.
Yes.
And he did prescribe medication, but I thought I want to try doing it without. Not that it's anything against it. I just thought, let me try. So I tried to like kind of follow meditation more so, and so I that was sort of my route, and I've been doing it pretty well.
Antidote,
And
yeah.
it's one of the. It's not a magic bullet. It's just one piece of a
I
puzzle
love it.
that helps you kind of keep going. So that's sort of my morning thing. Yeah, and then check emails.
Check emails, talk
Go
to
on
people.
Instagram,
Go on
yeah,
Instagram, do
whatever.
the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you go to bed at 11 now?
Yeah. So now
Is it 11?
It's around. Yeah. So our night ritual now is like we around 10ish or so, like 10:30, or whatever, depending on the day. If like Kyle's super exhausted,
Oh my
we might go into bed and actually just watch TV in bed. But like we did that last night, so we watched like shows that we've got recorded, whatever, and then usually around like 10:30ish, we'll put on like the CTV national late news,
Lose.
and then he'll usually go to sleep before me, and then if I'm still up, I'll watch the 11:30 news, and then I just put the TV on sleep mode, and then just
Go to bed.
Yeah, so somewhere like around, I'd say between 11 and 12, I'm asleep.
Okay,
Right.
that's perfect.
So it's
That's like a
manageable.
nice, manageable day.
It's a
Right.
manageable day.
yeah, 11. It's not like 4:30, go to bed.
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I think
Yeah.
it's just I just
Everyone
couldn't.
has their own
But I
circadian
remember,
rhythm.
that one thing I'll tell people, I remember when Mike didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mike at one point did not do that. He trained himself to do that because he was like, reading all these books about
Yeah.
these like legendary leaders.
Yeah, entrepreneurs. yeah.
Entrepreneurs, and he was like, everyone wakes up at 4:30. So all of a sudden, like one year, he went from like waking up at, I think you'd wake up at like 7. Yeah, you were like
Yeah,
7:30, 6:30, 7.
7, yeah.
And then he was like, I have to do this at 4:30, and now
Right.
that's just part of his
Yeah.
habit.
Yeah.
And that's what inspired me when I tried that. It was because they showed all these extremely wealthy, successful people
Right.
were
Waking
getting
up.
up before 5.
Yes.
I thought, well, damn, I
Crazy.
want to do that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just didn't have. It was at least up until this point. It hasn't been like something that's like the
Stuck.
cadence. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for teach their own, and I
Yeah.
think it's good to like you experimented with it,
For
and
sure.
like I think we should all experiment with different
Yeah.
practices, and we're gonna intuitively know what kind of works for us
Totally.
or not, and it's kind of it's kind of brilliant to kind of experiment and see and then find where your path is.
Mm-hmm.
What when all these programs, like all these books that we read and all these types of things, we're trying to find that like one or two things like that we can kind
Takeaway.
of like take
Yeah.
away,
Takeaways.
key takeaway for ourselves within our own being. There's all this stuff that's circulating, all this knowledge and information circulating, but it has to be impactful for you and
For
something that
sure.
you can sustain in the long term.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is really key.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear about your kind of your business trajectory, Jerry,
Yes.
Gary, and
Yeah.
like kind of like, obviously, so for those that don't know, Gary has a sterling reputation as a top producing realtor for many, many years.
Thank you.
Share with us some of your accolades, please, Gary.
Let's see. I've been in Medallion for like 14 years.
Yes.
I
Right.
think
Yeah.
I was President's Club a couple times. I've been President's
So
Club.
President's Club is top 1% of
Yeah.
our industry. So we're talking with
Yes.
1%er here. Yeah, people.
Oh my goodness.
So there's that. When I was still at Remax, I had different awards, and,
Right.
like Titan and all those
Yeah,
different categories,
right.
which is like either like $1 million or 750,000 or 500,000. Platinum Club I was for many years, and
Right.
which is half a million. Anyway, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that I'm really proud of that. I mean, because I know it is an achievement.
It is, yeah.
It doesn't define me today, but I guess it kind of goes back to like what we were talking about earlier. Like, I have a very solid foundation, and I had amazing mentorship when I
Right.
was
Yeah.
young.
Can you share with it?
Yeah. So my main mentor, who's like my
Best
brother,
friend.
is Ian Holt.
Ian Holt.
He's
yes.
retired now. He's actually still with our licensed in
Right.
our
Yes.
brokerage, but
Yes.
he's in a retirement program that
Yes.
Michael and Morgan created, which I
Yeah.
think was amazing. And so he's still on my team, and I took over his business about 4 years ago,
Right.
which I was so honored.
He is okay. I just want to tell everybody he is next level like legend in the sense of business, and he's also he just gives back, and he's just a
Yeah.
beautiful human being.
Yeah, yeah. I had two people like that, and the other one is Garrett Robinson, who I took over his business 2 years ago. And again, these are things I didn't plan.
No.
They came to me like Ian was Ian and I were like family, so it was more natural. And when he said I'm going to retire, he never loved the business. He did it because it was a way to have a good living.
He's
Good
natural
lifestyle.
too.
And he, like me, he doesn't have a formal education, and he was a taxi driver before. So like for him it was good, but he never really enjoyed it. I actually do,
Yes.
more so. When he really like the last 10 years, he was like, I can't, like, I just don't enjoy this. And so eventually he, retired and asked me. And so we had already been talking. Garrett was 2 years ago, and he approached me, and I wasn't expecting it. And he's another person that has an amazing reputation.
Right, he does.
Amazing
So
reputation.
loved in our community of
Yeah.
realtors.
Very thorough.
And
Very
like
thorough.
extremely he is if you're doing a deal with this guy, he is like butter. It's so
Yeah.
smooth.
Yeah, and so kind. And
Yeah.
and both those men taught me, and also my dad, but if you say you're going to do something, you do it.
High integrity.
High integrity, be a person of your word. And that is really paid in spades, I would say.
Yes.
Ian used to say to me over and over, if nothing else, just do what you're going to say.
That's all you gotta
Return a
do.
phone call, whatever. And that has, oh my God. And so those are things that with Ian, like, he taught me consistency. Like, I literally just carbon copied his marketing. Back then it was mail outs, and I still do them to this day. And I know you do too.
I do too.
Yeah. So
so does he. We
I,
all do.
I did all of I was doing a lot of Yaletown,
Yes,
and I've
yes.
scaled back some. I've dropped some, but I still do it. Never fails. Every single month something goes out. He taught me that. So there's
Consistency.
I feel like I had such great teachers, and again, for someone who needed to really get rebuilt, like from the inside out and ground up, like, I had people that just helped build me back up, and those were two people.
Did you when you first started your career, like back to it in 2002,
Mm-hmm.
did you have like goals set for yourself? Did you have like a
Mm-hmm.
target plan? Did you kind of dream up this, career that you have now that you've made?
I did have goals. I mean, I remember when I was, for example, when I first came in '96, and then I was in until 2000, and then came back in '04. So in '04, like when things really kind of was like the false start had passed and starting back, I remember like being in that condo, and I had a little home office sort of set up in my bedroom. And I would do everything myself. I'd stuff envelopes myself. I would do everything myself while I was watching Ellen and all these things. And I like wanted to break 100,000.
Okay,
Like,
that was a goal.
And for about
Go.
4 or 5 years, I couldn't do it. Like I was getting closer and closer, but I
Yes.
couldn't break that. And then as soon as I broke that window of that glass window, I think in hindsight, I realize now that I was doing things consistently year after year. But like a lot of things that you need inertia to get going,
Yes.
it was
Totally.
it's like almost like going through a swamp at first.
So how many years was that?
I was about 4 or 5
4
years.
4 or 5 years.
Where I had to
hit
keep
that
doing what I
target,
was
yeah.
doing every day, but
Yes.
nothing was getting full traction. And then all of a sudden, I remember, and it was around like
07,
2000,
08.
but after around the crash, like
09.
between 07 and 09, and all of a sudden, my from one year to another, I went from like, I don't know if it was like 60 or 70,000, I forget, to like 132. I'll never forget that. I was like, oh my god, I made $132,000. Like,
Okay, I want to give people just a little bit of context here. Back then, when we were like in 07,
Yeah.
like 08, like you had to do a lot of deals to get there.
Yeah,
like
because
you had to
the
do
average
a
sale was
lot.
like $5,000.
We were like
Exactly.
pushing
$6,000,
paper
There were
And-
condos in Yaletown for 99,000.
for 99,000.
Yeah, and there was very so basically there wasn't as much technology
No.
for
Oh my
efficiency. So
goodness.
basically for small addendums and everything
Faxes.
like that.
We were faxing
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Either faxing or visiting the homeowner. Like I remember I
Yeah.
thought that it was a personal touch to visit the homeowner. So I didn't really use fax a whole lot. I was
Right.
always carting around.
I was using the fax machine, guys.
I mean, really sounding old. Like, so when I first started, they were still doing carbon copies.
Yes.
And I
Yeah,
remember
the
like
tries.
Garrett and like Stephen Burke, who
Yeah.
they would be like, use a black pen and push really hard so that you can see.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I'm not joking. And then and then later on faxes came
Yes.
into play.
Yeah.
And then like it was and then so I remember as soon as I guess I was already at Remix. As soon as
09.
DocuSign came around, I was like, I'm signing up
Yeah.
right
yeah,
away.
yeah, yeah.
And that has been a game changer. DocuSign
Totally.
and Dropbox or like those have been game changers.
Did you
Yeah, they
have,
have.
did you have like, so you had some goals on that, but did
Mm-hmm.
you have like a farming goal? Did you
Right.
want to be a mega in one area?
Yeah, Yaletown was my
Yes.
sort of pocket back then because Yaletown was like new. It was developing. There were
Yes.
buildings going up like all the time. So, it would be like what you would look at, for example, as like
Mount Pleasant.
Mount Pleasant, or even like, for example, like
River District
River
kinda
District.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
where there's
yeah.
towers going up every day.
Yeah.
And so that was the area that I started to farm, and I would pick certain buildings, and then at first I only did a few because I was doing everything by hand, like or and back then like the tax rolls actually had people's names
Right.
on
I
it and
remember that.
addresses.
That was the best.
So I was literally doing that, and then but
By
I couldn't
hand.
afford to do that. I was only doing maybe 3 or 4 buildings, if that, and then. As time went on, I added a little bit more. But then I noticed something, which was, and again, it was literally carbon copying what Ian did. But then I noticed that most of the calls I got were people that didn't live in their units, so investors. So I thought, okay, I'm going to expand, but I'm only going to mail the investors in other buildings. So
So
then
smart.
back then I was pulling, again, we were looking at the tax rolls, and I was only mailing people whose
Didn't
address
reside.
was not that property.
Right.
So I was sending them letters every month. And so I think what happened was there was a niche of people weren't mailing those people very much.
Right, because they're like, they don't live here.
Or they weren't flyering them or whatever. So I was getting calls from investors saying, hey, I've been getting your mail. I want to sell.
This is like very funny because I remember Ian Watt.
Yeah.
Ian Watt, I don't know if you're listening to Ian, I don't know if you are, but you might be. But he used to not do those people that were not
Right,
international.
right.
Because he was like, oh, I'll just, like, there's nobody here that,
Yeah.
and you were hitting the other way, which is really smart.
Smart.
Yeah, and a lot
So
of them were
smart.
locals, like a
Yeah.
lot of local investors. But I to this day, I still have some people, usually older retired couples.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be saying, "I've been getting your letters for 8 years," and they'll have them saved. I remember you
That's
talked
when we
about
say
that.
things.
Yeah, and they'll be like,
What's
and-
wrong with us? We just keep
Yeah.
writing them.
And they would say, well, we're gonna use you for sure because what you've done has worked.
Right.
So
Yes.
anyway,
So-
yeah.
When you, in terms of converting those calls, because most of them are calls. Do you have any kind of tips for us that,
good.
or converting the listing?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not the kind. My style isn't like a hard sell, like or
Right.
show up, you got to sign it today, kind
Yeah.
of thing. I'm just not my style. Like, but I think providing a lot of information and service, and
So no pressure.
no pressure, but like giving them all the information that they can make their decision on, and again, I think
Providing value.
providing value, yeah, and
Yes.
going almost like back then, especially now, I don't feel like I have that in me as much, probably just because I'm older and I don't feel as. But I would try to do as many touches with them as I could. Like if there was something I found that would be used, I would send it to them or whatever. I'd be like just giving them as much info as they could, just so that I kept being top of mind
Top
for
of
them.
mind.
Like
Right.
so there was that.
People have lost that over time.
Yeah.
Like I'm just saying in general in real estate, this is a really great tip. Like don't forget about, like, I know there's a lot going on, a lot of business going on, but like going back to the people that you remember having conversations with. It's not dead until it's dead.
Yeah.
Keep on going back to them, keep on creating value and serving them.
Yeah.
Right?
I would say for me, I certainly have fallen off, not fallen off, but I'm not as diligent as I used to be. Like, I guess it's that I don't have that same, and maybe some of it comes with being older. Like I don't have that drive, like where I'm
Same.
like, I have to do this now.
Commission price.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even just feeling like I have to hit a target or goal.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I just don't have as much of that anymore.
So what does business planning look like for you now,
Yes.
Gary?
Yeah,
How's it
so
changed?
right now I just either set like a number, like a goal that I want to hit number, like as a GCI, or even just a transactional deal. And it's changed. Like, I remember pre-COVID, I used to set goals, and I would sometimes I wouldn't make it, and I'd feel sort of crappy about it or whatever. But I'd be close, and then like in the last few years, like especially with COVID, I was surpassing it, like even beyond my like whatever thought.
Right.
I like yeah, like I don't want to say numbers, just I don't want to brag, but like
Big numbers.
big numbers,
Big numbers,
yeah,
yeah.
big numbers,
Big numbers.
Life-changing
yes.
numbers,
It's great
yeah.
numbers.
Yeah, like especially for somebody, and I'll just say this, like who I have a high school education. I graduated from Tupper. I went to Langara for a year, didn't know what I wanted to do, and then I left. So I don't have a formal education. For somebody who's making high six figures, even into seven, like
Yes.
that's insane.
That's like top half 1%. I'm just gonna say that.
And that's something that I don't take lightly.
Oh,
Because
for granted.
I am so grateful for this industry and for this business, because I would never have the life I have today if it wasn't for real estate.
Right.
Never.
I feel like I need an applause.
Yeah.
No, I'm being serious though.
Yeah.
Like it's an industry that of course takes a lot of work and takes a lot of dedication and commitment, and it's an expensive business to be in. But I would never have the life I have today if it wasn't for real estate. Not even close.
You know what? You have gone so you've done both. You've done single agent and you've gone team.
Yes.
What was the change? Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that's had its own iterations too. So like when I was in Tom Ferry coaching, I'm impressionable even when I was young. They kept pushing team. So I was really in this when I was still at Remax before coming to Oakwyn. I was in this big team phase. I was also younger too, so that probably played a factor. But I was just like, I want to build a team. So at the height of that, or whatever you want to call it, the most, I had I think four plus agents plus an assistant plus me. And
You were growing like rapid fire.
yeah, and it was, and to be honest though, I didn't love it. I felt soul sucked. I felt like it was this revolving door. And in hindsight, I realized I probably didn't have great leadership skills and all the skills I needed, and maybe it just wasn't the trajectory that I wanted to be in. But most of my career up to that was solo agent. But I've had an assistant since 2007, I think, or I had part-time. So I've had help in kind of a team for a long time. But then I went to the growing a team. Then after that, during just before COVID, that kind of started to fizzle out, and that's the time when I mentioned that I felt like I was drowning. It was that period of that plus like the house. I just felt like I couldn't, and I literally thought I have to drop some things.
Yeah, like I can't
for my
manage
own
this.
health. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I that kind of started to happen, and then I still maintained the assistant, and then now again, it's funny how sometimes if you just let go and let things happen the way they're supposed to, that's how they go. And that's how literally like eventually then it went to like having Ian first and then Garrett both retire but join forces like in a way
Right.
where I took over their businesses. And I mean, Garrett, for example, when I took over his business, the first year, $250,000 of business alone came from him.
From him.
Never mind mine. So and also Ian's, and Ian's was a very solid business too, just that he
Right.
retired a little earlier. So
Yeah.
there were two new lead sources,
Like
of
revenue
business.
streams.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
I never planned for.
Right.
But
Oh my God, that's a lot.
but it
Like
was,
a lot of volume.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
but I was grateful for it, and it was something that I never planned. But I think it's something that I think is a really, if you're either younger or older, it's a great sort of thing to think about, in
For
terms of,
long-term planning.
yeah, like to have as another revenue stream, whether you're like
Oh gosh.
younger and have a business where you want to have more revenue but have a team. Like it's just something that I didn't think about, but it's been really awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to, when you talk about integrity, because people are watching, people observe,
Right.
and they see kind of how you behave, how you act, if you follow through or if you don't. And, no one like Garrett or Ian
Ian.
are going to trust their business and livelihood and the thing that they've established over 20 plus years
Yeah.
to someone that doesn't have those characteristics.
Yeah.
So
Same
I feel
values.
like,
Yeah.
a lesson for us is that, hey, people watch and they
Yeah.
notice. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, I'm
You are watching.
retiring. Gary, you're the only person I know that has been high integrity and has followed through with everything they're going to say. So I
Right.
love for us to be able to work together. But that's after like a decade of having a relationship together
Sure.
or more
Yeah.
of that high integrity relationship and kind of looking at it from that perspective. So I think that that's like a very impactful and insightful thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't know, it's the ripple effect. It's like the butterfly effect,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes like these little things, they have like these great impacts from the long perspective. So
Yes.
I think it's really kind of it just goes to show you like how it could change your business. So
Yeah.
for example, like when Garrett and Ian kind of passed on their business loan, that's like 250,000 plus
amazing.
on per
Amazing.
year,
Yeah.
like as a revenue stream. And you didn't know that it was because of what you did 10, 15 years ago,
Exactly.
where you like make sure you didn't stand them up for coffee, right?
Right. Or
like, 'cause
said you're going to do something. you
yeah,
didn't.
saying you're
Yes.
going to do something and you didn't do it. So I think it goes to show, and I think that might somewhat be lost in this this next generation. Some
Yeah.
in this upcoming generation. Not all.
Not
but
all.
Yeah. But
I
yeah.
agree with you. I think
Yeah.
that even more recently, I've had like experiences like where I've seen that where there's either a sense of entitlement or they just don't understand the impacts of doing the small things and how they
Yes.
have a long-term effect, or if you don't do things or how your attitude around them has an impact for you down the road. So I see that too. I mean, it's funny because I'm reading a book now that actually Paris in our office. Who,
Sure.
I love
Mina
her.
Paul?
Yeah.
I love
What
you.
book?
She's my new
She's my BFF.
I love her. Yeah. And
Speaking of people that
yeah.
get referrals, a lot of people refer Paris from other
Yes.
places because of how she is.
I'm referring to her like if I travel now, like
Paris.
she's my person, and like
You know?
and speaking to watching, like I watch her,
Yes.
and like at 55 almost, like I think if I'm gonna retire,
You look like you're 38 years old.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
get
hard to
it.
believe.
it's a really
get
good lighting
it,
here in the
guys.
garage in the studio.
You're 38.
In the shack.
Thanks, Brayden.
You're 38.
No, but
yes.
like I think about it's something that's in
The
my wheelhouse
feeling.
and mindset, mind like train of mind. Like, what is that going to look like? So yeah. Anyways, I watch her and that's a person who's younger who has integrity and keeps to her word and
Is strong
is
and she's
solid,
solid.
and like has kindness
Very
and
much
you know,
so.
and in this
Beyond.
and in this industry, those are the things that aren't always seen but stand out a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think people don't really understand the consequences of some I think in some cases every action there's a consequence. Every action is equal as a reaction.
Yeah.
So if you're kind of doing things halfway, or there's an element of like consequence or reaction to that, and like I think it all culminates into whether someone entrusts you with their business when they retire or when they don't, right?
And also when
so,
they want to work with you too.
Right.
Yeah.
So like
That
have,
was
like,
the book.
very,
Sorry, Atomic Habits.
Oh, Habits.
James
Yeah.
Clear.
Great
Yeah.
Excellent.
Sorry, I forgot to
Solid
say it.
book.
Yeah, that's a great one. It's about the small things.
all the
It's
small
what we're
things.
talking about. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying that I remember when I first started, I was in like a Titan office with, Greg Baker, who's still Titan, but Lockhart. And I remember like we do Friday tours. So
Yes.
Gary and I worked the same neighborhoods. We were always I was always like around him. And I was like, I get so nervous when I had to go into Gary's open
Really?
houses.
Why?
Okay, let me tell you. Okay, because
I get nervous when I saw
like
you. I was
getting
like, oh,
blushing.
she's so pretty.
I'm
and young.
blushing.
She's gonna take away my business.
no, it's like, you set a standard. And that was very clear. So when we walked into, like, me and still a friend of mine, Paul Albright, and I just saw him the other day, we were like the two like munchkin, two little people on the block, and we knew what we watched everybody that was actually who we had to be with. It's not even about who we had to beat; it's who we had to kind of be around.
Right.
And Gary, you just like set that standard, but did it in such a beautiful grace. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, your other side of you, which is giving back. Like you have. We have Oakwyn Kindest coming up, which is a huge part of our company, but you do this like just every single day. When did you start really getting attached to some of those charity pieces in your life?
Giving back.
Giving back.
Yeah. Well, so like, again, like sort of in my journey, like one of the things that was really not drilled into me, but like certainly emphasized was about being a productive member of society again. And part of that is giving back, and also just, having integrity and all those things. And so for me, giving back at first, the first thing I wanted to do was somewhat like in a way of like an accomplishment where I wanted to be on an association or a board of some. So way back, you Morgan, you might remember there was
this.
the GLBA,
Yes.
the Gay and Lesbian Business
Yes.
Association. It doesn't exist anymore. It's called Loud, but it's something different. I joined that, and I was with that for about 6 years.
You were with that for a long
Yeah, and
time.
so there was people in that.
Remember.
There were people that were in that association that I'm still connected with, like Ryan McKinley at Van City. He's done some of my mortgages, and other people like anyways. So that was quite impactful for me because I learned about how to be a entrepreneur amongst other entrepreneurs and like create like that connection, and also like in terms of networking, that was impactful. And obviously that was not so much charitable, but it was about that. Then the next big step is I really wanted to be part of a very high profile or successful charitable organization board. And so I put my name forward for the Dr. Peters Center. And so that board was a super high profile board. Like they had Ian Gillespie.
I
They
know.
had like
High level.
Yeah, really high
Yes.
level. And I was just like super intimidated. But at first I joined a committee for a year because they said, that's what you have to do. So I did. And then they invited me to join the board. And I was freaked out because I was scared that
Imposter syndrome.
imposter syndrome. Like I'm
Right.
not
For
good
sure.
enough for this. Anyways, but I was there. I was with them for 9 years on the board, and I'm really proud of being on that. And they asked me to stay longer when there was a transition of co-chairs and stuff like that. And that's when, in that period, one of the founders, John Evans, who owns Opus Hotels and he's a developer, he said to me, Gary, I want you to go out in the community to like younger gay guys like yourself, or like even younger than you, and like invite a bunch of them for a lunch at my hotel at the restaurant. And I want us to start an event. I want you to start an event that's more kind of like approachable for that professional crowd,
yes.
Right.
Because they had life commitment, which is like $1,000 a plate. Very like well-heeled people. They've got like Passions, which has been going forever, which is more sort of like middle range. But anyway, so I I invited a bunch of people, and then
A new generation.
newer generation. So
Right.
Ryan
Yes.
McKinley and Kevin Mazzoni, who's with Lazy Gourmet, who's still our caterer, and myself started the Pride Cocktail Kickoff. I mean, they kind of those two guys were the ones that kind of spearheaded some of the ideas, but I was there with them, and then it's grown ever since. And I mean,
Oh my goodness.
we've raised over $500,000. We've raised.
Wow.
But for that, I would say on a personal level, I did the AIDS walk every year for about 5 years. I raised $25,000 every year. And I did that for my own personal reasons and being part of the community and so on. And that was something that also was, again, for me, feeling like I was a productive member of society, but also giving back. But those things, I feel like in hindsight, were esteemable acts. They taught me self-esteem
I love that.
and helped me like in my own way rebuild myself of like, hey, I'm doing something to help, but it's making me feel better
yeah.
about myself.
Yeah,
You know what I
they're
mean?
bigger. They're
big
bigger
thi-
than what
Yeah.
even your career
Yeah.
allocate. You know,
Yeah.
like all your awards and are because they're filling you up in a
yeah,
different way.
they're very fulfilling in
Yeah.
a different way. And even I remember like the earlier days of Pride Cocktail Kickoff, we would be at it was at the Loden penthouse. And I remember like when we were like really like pushing the event, and the event was still new, but it was like still kind of getting its feet. And like I remember standing there one day and during the event, and I was looking, I was like, I can't believe I'm part of this.
Gosh.
Like I helped make this happen. Like it was just one of those like surreal
Yeah.
things. Yeah. So that's been, you know,
It's
those,
very. It's a full pride.
Yeah.
You know, at that point.
so I mean, it's nothing that I've, other than like the solo things that I've done with teams, but like nothing I've ever done by myself. It's just
Right.
kind of either being with other people or like spearheading something and asking people to help or whatever. But
Those out of body moments that you have, you know, like those
Yeah.
kind of like stepping back
Yeah.
outside of yourself and seeing kind of some of those like, you know, like events like that happening and how you can contribute to that. And I think like, you know, it's very admirable and it sets such a wonderful example to a lot of professionals. You know, I think, you know, sadly to say, in real estate, it can be very selfish. It can be all
Right.
about
Yeah.
you, and
Yeah.
you know, your
Yeah.
name is everywhere, and
Yeah.
kind of your face is everywhere. It
Gosh.
can really
yeah,
be
it's very ego driven.
very
Yes.
ego-driven, and to like have that as a like a driver for you know, for yourself and your you know, for your esteem and for like the value that you bring, I think is really admirable. And I think it sets a great example for every professional that's kind of trying to make it in the city and in this you know, trying to find
I
themselves.
think it's interesting
Yeah.
with what you said about like being an imposter, which happens a lot for a lot of people. They don't want to go and take the chance
Yeah.
and go be a part of something like that because they're scared.
Yes.
How did you get over that? Like, I think that's such a great. And what did you learn from actually being with those people? I guess.
Yeah, I think, you know, the imposter syndrome part of it, I think, and having that fear, I know the part of that is kind of innately in me, but I have to just walk through it.
You got
and
to walk
push-
right through it.
Walk through it. I mean, you guys are like that, like, but I had to push through that and be like, okay. And also, again, it's those little things like you guys said, like, if I said I'm going to do something, okay, I said it. Now I have to do it.
Right.
So it's kind of like I've trapped myself into doing this because I have to do it, right?
Right.
So that was part of it. And then, so just the follow through of doing that, even though it felt super uncomfortable, but then obviously then feeling good about it. And, you know, I think that's kind of, and then being around people like that, I've learned, I mean, being on the board of Dr. Peter taught me so much and being around, and it's kind of like that saying, like, if you're the smartest person in a room, you're in the wrong room.
Yes.
Like, so being around, being in a room where there's like people
So
that are
much
like so
talent.
much talent, so high level. I mean, to be honest, not to sound cheesy, but like I feel that way when I came to Oakwyn. I feel so like recharged in the sense where like there's so many young and like and people that are like in different phases of their career, like you
Yes.
guys, like, you know, young parents that are like really like in the trajectory of like going. That's inspiring. And I'm not there. Like I've kind of gone past that, and I don't have kids, and that's not my intention anymore, but it's
Right.
still something that inspires me. And I love being around
Sorry,
that
but your
energy.
dogs are your kids.
My dogs are my
Sorry.
kids. I know. Yeah.
My
like,
dog's my kid too. I'm not gonna lie to you. A child, he's like,
some
I
of my dog
think about
outfits are
him
more
too much.
expensive than kids outfits.
Yes, I'm not gonna lie to you. Harry's the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, those are the things that are like inspiring and recharge, and so I like that.
I love that.
Yeah, and I think having the people that surround you, that support you, it's what it's all about. But I just have to say, Gary, that, you know, just full circle, you know, I think when I just picture you as that young kid in the bathroom, terrified, and into what you are now, you know, like what an amazing journey. You could have been an evil person, but you decided to be like, you know,
I could
like,
have been dead.
yeah. So some people that
You
have
could have
gone
been an
through
evil
these things could be
Yeah.
like, could go to the dark, but instead, you know, choosing another option and really giving back, and, you know, infusing your family and community and your heart and soul into these endeavors, I think is admirable, and it sets a great example for us. So we're proud.
Inspirational. Yes,
We're,
you.
you know, I can say
inspirational.
on behalf of all of us that we're proud and
To
we're-
run with you,
to run
baby.
with you, to
That's
stand,
right.
Thank
yeah,
you.
to stand beside you, and that you're a part of our community, and that you're so open and authentic to be able to share your story with us at
Thanks.
Oakwyn. I think that's a great place to leave it, unless there's
Sure,
anything
I
else.
could talk for hours.
I
with
could talk
Gary.
to like I know it's already an
This
hour.
could be a two-parter.
yeah, could be a long time,
Just
but you know,
kidding.
I think anything else you want to add, Gary, to your
Give me a tip to some of those people that are
yeah.
there.
So like,
that
if
are
someone's
struggling.
struggling right now, so
Yeah.
somebody,
Yeah,
you know,
this is it. Because I
what
feel
would
like
you
right
what
now.
would you tell them?
You know, I would say a couple things. One would be, for me, like my successes or my journey in life has been on the shoulders of others. It's never been like, I'm not this silo. And so like, reaching out for help. And I think the other part of it would be that when I really truly embraced abundance, like giving back, whatever way that looks like, whether it's like your time or obviously money,
Right.
or whatever it is. When I'm in a place of abundance, it just comes back. But when I'm in a place of scarcity, like fear and like fists closed, not hands open, that's when things don't come my way. I've learned that countless times in real estate. Anytime I felt I was in fear and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose this deal. Like that's when things would just like fall apart, go to shit, whatever. But when I just felt like it doesn't matter, like I was in a mindset of abundance and like everything's going to be fine and work out, that's when things just happen. And so anybody who's in that phase where they're just feel like they're trudging through
drowning.
mud and they can't get past, like keep putting one foot in front of the other and don't stop doing what you're doing, but also do things that make you feel like you're in a mindset of abundance. Even if you don't materially have a lot, it doesn't matter.
Powerful Gary, Sarah. That is powerful. Okay. Well, on that note,
I'm
guys.
gonna cry. I'm like
Thank you,
crying
Gary.
in the corner. I'm like,
That
did
was
you not
powerful.
see me tear up?
That was, anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for listening to the Oakwyn
Okay.
podcast. We gotta have Gary on more.
Part two's coming soon.
Yeah.
Like Robin
2023.
Barney,
Yeah.
part two.
Robin
Part two
just
is
wouldn't leave us.
coming back soon.
like, "Can you leave?"
Yeah. Robin's like, oh, I got nothing to do. Yeah. And on that note, guys, thanks so much for listening to the Oakwyn podcast. Morgan, what should people do that listen and like the podcast?
They should rate us 5 out of 5 on
yeah.
the podcast,
Hell
or
yeah.
they should go to oakwyn.com/join and put in that message box Evolve 2022, and you will be reached out to one of the leads at Oakwyn.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us,
Okay,
Gary. We
thanks,
love you.
guys.
We love you
Gary.
too.
Okay,
Thanks.
take care. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.